There's the live stream. It is our 10-minute warning, everybody, before we get started on today's 2/20/11/02 Core 2 A+ study group. We have all new questions for you today in this first hour. And of course, I will be answering questions in the second hour. So you're welcome to submit those questions at any time through the link you see on your screen, which of course is professormesser.com/QA. Oh, we got lots going on. All right. Well, let's see who we can get in here today. I see folks are already in, putting their virtual pin in our virtual map in this virtual world. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Welcome aboard. Grab something to drink, get comfortable. We've got a lot of good Core 2 stuff today. And of course, feel free to submit your questions at any time. The second hour is our after show. And we'll talk about, in fact, in the after show, in the very first part, we'll go through a detailed overview of what the new A+ exam is bringing, the one that is not here yet, the one that technically does not exist. So I will let you know when we expect it to exist and what that means for you at the beginning of the second hour. It'll be a bit of a repeat from our Tuesday study group, but a number of you that attend this study group are not in that study group. So I thought repeating it is not a bad idea. And I'll give you my ideas, my suggestions, my philosophy on how I think you should handle those upcoming changes. I think we can pretty much say they are upcoming changes at this point. I always talk about it. If it hasn't happened yet, I always talk about it that it doesn't exist. But the reality is it's coming. It will be here soon. Let's see if I cannot get this to work. Let's see if we can get it to work. Oh, I got to have this set up for Touch ID. So, of course, there is the map. You should be able to plug it in and stick your virtual pin cushion on the map. I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see there's people all over. We got our folks in Canada. Thanks for being here. Canadians up there in somewhere near Hamilton. We've got some folks in the middle of the water. I suspect Malk has joined us somewhere. That tends to be who checks in. We've also got folks in the EU and South Africa. So thank you so much for being here. We got a lot of good stuff today. Yes, it is Malk. Hey, Malk, good to see you. I knew you were here. I could feel your presence. I knew that was happening. And Puerto Rico is here, hanging out in Caguas, checking out the live stream. We've got plenty to go through today. There's so much happening right now behind the scenes. You just don't even know. Whenever there's a new version of an exam that's coming out, regardless of what it is, A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, it is crazy town. It's constant motion because there's so many things to do. It's almost overwhelming, but you kind of have to break things up into categories. It takes, I mentioned in the last live stream, it's a lot like having a baby where you have this gestation period of months and months and months and months. So nobody knows anything is going on. You're sort of waiting. You're building all the content. You're writing. You're creating course notes. You're creating these other things. And then finally on release day, you'll be able to show people some of the results of what you have. Unlike having a baby, the actual process of deploying and putting all of these things out also takes a little bit of time as well. So it's not quite as straightforward as me just saying, here you go. There's a lot of moving parts for that as well. But that's part of the fun. That's part of what we do with all of this. So it's always a good time. I like this part of doing what we do here, which is we create this new stuff. And I think I like it so much because I feel like every one of the new courses is better than the old course. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but as a proud father, I feel that is the case. I feel that the new course notes, which I'm working on right now, are pretty much done. I'm doing layout. So the new course notes, they look so good. I can't wait for you to see them. So it'll be really great. We got a lot to go through today. And I have, of course, all new questions. We'll be going through that. We got our 5-minute warning, 4.5 minutes, I guess, looking at the clock on the wall. We'll see what's up. And we'll see, well, what other things that you might work through. All of these videos, we'll go through the details of the videos and what's in here and what we're doing with it. And if you have questions that are about the A+, about technology, about IT, or just about anything that you would like to ask, you can always do that by visiting this URL that's behind me here, professormesser.com/QA, and you can absolutely submit your question. I will go through those in the second hour. So there's always something. There's always something. 4 minutes to go. I like this part of the live stream. I just make sure everything's working. So the numbers look good on our live stream. Again, I'm sending about 6 megabits per second to Google, to YouTube, and then they re-engineer the signal, they re-render it, and send it off to you. So my stream's looking really good right now. 3% means that there is a cache of 3% of the content that I am sending to YouTube. So there's a very slight delay as I'm going through this and sending it out. And that 3% number is a good number. That's an average number. If that number was to increase, then I'd know there's a problem sending information to YouTube because it was starting to cache up on my side. So we'll see. We'll see what's going on with all of that. 3 minutes to go. 3 minutes to get this thing going. Thanks to everybody for joining the live stream. Hey, chat room, thanks for being here. Folks checking in from all over. We know that Malk is here from the Caribbean areas. It's hard to tell where the Caribbean stops and where Leeward Islands start. I don't know. I don't know the geography there that well. I need to do some more homework on what it is exactly considered geographically, regionally speaking. And then we've got folks checking in. I've already seen from South Africa, folks in Canada, had folks Tallahassee up there on Tennessee Street, up there on North Monroe Street, hanging out. There's a lot going on. Thank you so much for being here. These are always fun. Well, they're fun for me. I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a blast. So we'll do that. We'll work through all those. You haven't gotten an email about your CEU from the last stream? That was 2 days ago. And as I mentioned, it usually takes me about a week. Realistically, I tend to do these on the weekend. So I collect the CEUs during the week. And if we have a live stream, there's a lot of them that come in. And then at the end of that, why did I shorten the A+ time frame? I don't pick the time frame, brother. That's not for me to say. I give you an estimate, and I got pretty good. I got pretty close. I think I said mostly it was the October-November time frame. They moved it up to September. I think that's pretty good. I think we did all right. That was relatively accurate. And of course, if you notice, if we don't have a solid date, you'll notice I'm always saying approximately we expect it to be. This is when we estimate that it will be available. And an estimation is only that. I don't have any insight into the process. I don't know what's going on. That's weird. I don't have that level of relationship with my good friends at CompTIA. We are a CompTIA partner, but they tend to keep those numbers and the planning for that very, very close to their vest, which is fine. That way they can figure out when they want to do it and they can deploy it, and they don't have to worry about telling other people and have an expectation there, which is good. Which is pretty good. We got less than a minute to go. I guess I should probably prepare, at least mentally, for what we are about to undertake. I'm pretty much ready with questions. I wrote the questions yesterday, so I'm not quite as organized this time as I normally am, but that also means a number of the questions are still top of mind. Do they wear vests? I'm assuming. They're in Chicago, so they wear those fleece vests. I don't have a fleece vest. I'm in Florida. I barely have a jacket. So that's sort of how it works. It is top of the hour. Let's start up our keynote. Let's get a green light. These are always good. Green light. Love it. Love it. That'll do its thing. Very nice. which means it's time to do a live stream, everybody. Top of the hour. Just got the notice there. Let's see if we can make this thing do what it's supposed to do. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2025 Professor Messer 220-1102 Core 2 A+ study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and hopefully you're able to follow along and answer some of these questions along with us. And of course, we do a deep dive into these questions. We find out why the question is right, why the other answers are wrong. We answer some questions from the chat room. There's a lot that we do. And of course, in our second hour, I will open up the Q&A. You're more than welcome to join us in the second hour for all of the Q&A that we plan on doing. The way that you are able to answer questions on this live stream and the way that you're able to submit questions for the second hour is from the link that you see right here. It is the link that is professormesser.com/QA. That's the one that does everything. You go to that page, you can just sit there, and you'll be able to answer questions. You don't have to go to any other website, which is kind of nice. The Q&A that we are doing, and that link is one that is only available during this live stream. If you are watching this on a replay, regrettably, that particular link will not be available for you, which means you should be hanging out with us. You should be checking out our live streams and joining us live. It's always a lot of fun. We were just talking in the pre-show for the live stream, the different things that we are working on. So let's see how well you're able to answer that question. I have what we call our rewind question, which is a question we did on a previous study group, but I want to see if you remember the answer to this question. This question is, after a failed attempt to install Linux on a separate partition of a Windows computer, this message now appears when booting. Quote, operating system not found. End quote. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Would it be to run system restore, reinstall Windows, run startup repair, remove the Linux partition, or run SFC? As always, of course, we answer this question by visiting the URL that's on your screen. Please go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. Please do not put your answer in the chat room. Please do not put any hints in the chat room. We're going to treat the chat room as if it does not exist. Well, it does exist. I can't help not seeing the chat room. Hi, chat room. But we're not going to put any answers in there. So we're going to try to play it as if we are in the exam room answering the questions, and we'll see how we do. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. In the meantime, let me welcome you to this crazy experiment called our study groups. This is a place where I get to have a lot of fun and ask questions of you, and we get to see and learn a little bit more about the exam objectives. Of course, when we're not doing this live stream, our entire A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus courses are available on YouTube, absolutely free, no registration. I don't hold anything back. Every minute of every video is out there, and you can simply go to our channel and watch every single one of them. We have playlists already set up for you. You can find those at professormesser.com/YouTube. Of course, I do a daily A+ pop quiz question during the week, Monday through Friday. You can find that either delivered to your email inbox. You can sign up on our website for that. We have those also posted on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. So we try to find wherever you happen to be, and we put those questions there so you can find them. You can use whatever method you would like to be able to find those and be able to answer the questions that we have for you every single day. I do not reuse those questions in this live stream, though. You're getting brand new questions every time you attend one of these study groups. I make up all the questions myself. I did them yesterday. I was a little behind. Normally, I get them done about a week ahead of time, but it's been a little busy, and we'll talk more about how it has been busy in the beginning of the second hour in our after show. Keep in mind that I will provide you with a continuing education unit credit, specifically a webinar category version of that. And sometime during this first hour, I will give you instructions on how to submit your email to receive one of those. Usually takes me about a week to turn these around, but it's something that you can earn by simply hanging out, having a good time with us here. Currently, there are one edition of the A+ certification that consists of 2 different exams. These 2 exams are the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. These exams were released on April the 20th of 2022, and they will retire on September the 25th of 2025. These are dates that we have received from CompTIA. They've not really made them public, it seems, on their website yet, but they did tell us in a meeting that, yep, that's the date you can expect. So I really do think that's a pretty good number to go with. The exam requirements are that we have 90 minutes for each of the exam. For the 220-1101, you need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. Today, of course, we're going to be doing questions that are from the 220-1102, which means you have to earn a 700, a little bit better, on the same scale of 100 to 900. Now, even though this exam retires in September, there will be, of course, other exam versions that are coming along. We will talk about that at the beginning of the after show. But if you were to pass this exam today or to pass it on September 25th, not my recommendation, but you could, your certification will be good for 3 years after passing the exam. So once you are certified, it doesn't matter what they do with the exam questions. It doesn't matter what version of the exam questions. It doesn't matter when a new exam is released. It doesn't matter when an exam is retired, because you're already certified. So this is a great way to lock in your certification and not ever have to worry that anything else is ever going to affect the 3-year cycle of your specific certification. And indeed, once you pass the 2 exams, you can simply renew the certification every 3 years, and that certification doesn't require you to take the exams again. So this might be the only time you take and pass these A+ exams is during this initial process. At least I hope that for you. You never want to go through this all over again. So keep in mind when your certification will expire, make sure that you don't miss those expiration dates and that you renew your certification. Today, we will be talking about the A+ 220-1102. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as the Core 2 exam. There are only 2 exams, a Core 1 and a Core 2. So I guess they would be core, wouldn't they? These consist of topics associated with operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. We will go through all of those different categories in our live stream today. If you are watching this on our live stream or watching the video of this, that replay of the video is available immediately afterwards on our YouTube channel. We also create an audio-only podcast distributed version of this live stream. You can find that on your favorite podcast listening index. If you have a podcast program that you use to subscribe, you can also find it on our website at professormesser.com/podcast, or you can simply go to, if you are on a streaming service like Spotify, for example, you can go to Spotify and just type in Professor Messer and you'll find the podcast there as well. It's a very easy way to find this audio and to be able to listen wherever you happen to be. The YouTube video is available immediately afterwards, as I mentioned. And if you wait about a day or so, my marketing manager, Lori, goes through the entire video. She's watching the replay now. Hi, Lori. She's going through this, and she is putting in all of these timestamps that you see magically appear in the YouTube video description. So if you're looking for anything from this live stream or from any of our previous live streams, you can find all of that information in the YouTube video description. There's also a Discord server available. This is what we are usually doing when we're not doing a live stream. I'm hanging out there all the time. You can find us at professormesser.com/Discord. Thousands of people are there studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, or just hanging out with us. It's a place where you can connect with other people, start up a study group, create your own study room where you can start streaming or watch videos together. A great place to get together and a really nice community of folks. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take the exam. And on our website, I try to give you a break by offering a discount on the traditional vouchers. You could, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price. But why would you do that if you are in the US or Canada and you would like to get these vouchers? Unfortunately, I don't have vouchers available for other parts of the world at the moment, but we are working on that. I know I've said that before, but we continue to work on that. I would like to open it up to other parts of the universe so that everyone gets a discounted voucher. If you do purchase the vouchers from my site, you also get an exam hacks ebook. This is an ebook that I wrote that is available for free. In fact, you can't buy this ebook. It is only available if you purchase a voucher or you purchase one of our success bundles. This has a list of tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years for taking the CompTIA exams and things that I feel would be very useful and good strategies that you could use during the exam itself. All of these discounts and all of these freebies are available on my website. Simply visit professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now look at that question we asked earlier. After a failed attempt to install Linux on a separate partition of a Windows computer, this message now appears when booting. Operating system not found. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Would it be to run system restore, reinstall Windows, run startup repair, remove the Linux partition, or run SFC? Let's see what you chose in this list. 60% of you say we should run startup repair. 14% say remove the Linux partition, which is also tied with the 14% that say run system restore. 8% said to run SFC, whatever that is. And then we have 4% that say to reinstall Windows. Well, if you are having a problem with your system starting, there's some type of error that's starting, it's starting into safe mode, something about the startup process just isn't right, then what you want to do is run startup repair. There are a number of different problems that startup repair can solve, everything from boot partition issues, bootloader problems, files that are missing. It's quite a complex set of things that occur during the startup process. And this is actually a pretty good utility to help you understand how to get everything starting. So if you are running into a problem where you're trying to figure out why isn't this computer starting properly, try running startup repair. You might be surprised at how quickly and easily it can resolve the issue, restart your computer, and you're back up to running at 100%. So that means the folks that said run startup repair, you did a little better than we did last month. So well done. You remembered the answer to that one. That is the correct answer. The ones that answered run system restore, running system restore is difficult when the system will not find an operating system. But it also doesn't guarantee that this is going to solve any problems with starting the OS. System restore will restore your Windows to a previous configuration, but it won't restore the boot sector of your drive to a previous configuration. That's a little bit outside the scope of what Windows handles. Then instead, you want to run startup repair to resolve that issue. We also have another one, remove the Linux partition. Removing the Linux partition will certainly get rid of Linux, but it won't fix the problems that occurred because you installed Linux. There's nothing in Linux that's preventing your Windows from starting up. You instead need to redirect where that boot sector is pointing. When you installed Linux, everything booted over to the Linux side. In fact, you probably removed Linux, which is why it's giving you the message that the operating system is not found. Well, how do I know this? Don't ask me. Yes, I've done this on my own computer where I've messed up my boot sector, and now when I try to start it up, it's trying to start an operating system that's no longer on my system, and therefore my operating system is not found. SFC, the system file checker, will restore Windows files that have been corrupted or removed. We aren't even at that point yet. We're not even able to run Windows, so SFC is not going to help us very much. And indeed, the same problem with reinstalling Windows. There's no way to well, we can reinstall it. There's certainly a way, but there's no way to fix the boot sector to point to our new installation of Windows. And that's probably not the best way to do that. The Windows installation will overwrite the existing boot sector, so that could be an option to consider for later. But that wasn't the question. The question said which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue. Instead of overwriting and perhaps deleting important information on your Windows configuration, why don't you just run startup repair? It's not going to erase anything. Everything's going to be fine. That's one of the cases where there might be two answers that could technically work, but only one of them is going to be the best way. And in this case, the best way is to run startup repair. So hopefully you remembered that from last month. A number of you stepped through some different ideas and different options for using these features. Now let's change our focus a bit. As many of you know, the exam for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and others from CompTIA are more than just multiple choice questions. The question we just did was a multiple choice question. There was a question and there were multiple answers to choose from. Even if you didn't know the answer, you had a 20% chance of getting it right. So here's our problem. How do you really try to tell if somebody knows what they're doing? And one of the ways that you do that is you don't ask them multiple choice questions. Instead, you ask them any other kind of question that you might run into. And in fact, on your exam, the first handful of questions you get at the beginning of your exam will not be multiple choice. They will be what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. These are really just anything but multiple choice. These could be fill in the blank. They could put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform some functions. It might be a drag and drop question. It might be one with pull down menus. There's many different ways to ask a question, and they try to do this in different ways that are something other than a multiple choice question. So I have for you today a brand new performance-based question, just as we do with every study group. Our performance-based question of the month is this one. It is working at the Linux command line, and I want you to perform 3 different tasks at the Linux command line and tell me what you would type in to perform these tasks. The first is determine the IP address of the local computer. How would I do that in Linux? And in fact, there are a couple of ways to do it in Linux. I'm looking for one of 2 different ways that you could do this. Technically, there's more than 2 ways to do this, I realize. In Linux, there's always more than one way to perform a task, but I'm looking for one of 2 that are definitely from the exam objectives. Now, of course, if you remember or you recall what these are, make sure that you answer at the link on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to answer these questions. Once you have determined the IP address of the local computer, I'd like you to check to see if IP address 1.1.1.1 is on the network. How would you do that? What is the best way to do that? That's what we want to be able to focus on. And the third is, once we have checked our system, we have seen what our local IP address is, we've checked another IP address to see if it is on the network, I would like to query a DNS server for a specific host, and this host is www.professormesser.com. That's what I would like to do. And again, there are a number of different ways to do that, but in this case, we are going to be using the ways that are listed in your CompTIA exam objectives, and there's really, for Linux, only one of those was really listed. So if you think you know the answer, you see the link on your screen, which is professormesser.com/QA. Put in your answers there for all 3 of these and submit your answer and tell me what you think you would use in this scenario. As you're probably aware, this version of the exam, the 220.1102, the Core 2 exam, has a very strong emphasis in Windows. So Windows 10 and Windows 11 are a big emphasis on this version of the exam. But of course, you still have to know information about Linux. There are quite a few Linux command lines you have to know, and Linux in general. And you have to know a bit about Mac OS. This is probably what you will find when you walk into pretty much any organization these days. Practically every company in the world is running Windows. Practically every company in the world is running Linux. And almost every company in the world has some level of Mac OS that they're using. So you need to be prepared for anything. And you need to be well versed in all of these, because you might be working on a Windows computer to fix a problem, and the next thing you're working on is Mac OS. So you need to be able to shift between those relatively easily. So make sure you know the differences in the commands between all of these. Fortunately, the commands, I think, are relatively similar, at least in function. Sometimes the syntax is a little bit different, but this is one where this might help you a little bit as you are working through all of this. I used to go into, when I was working for cybersecurity companies and large technology companies out of California, I would go into 3 or 4 different companies every day. We would travel around and talk to them about the solutions that we had for them. And when we would do that, we would find a lot of information. Well, there goes my screen. We'll do it this way. Whenever we're working and trying to find that, I would ask them and talk to them about what type of systems do you have? What operating systems are there? What other things do you have? And the pieces that are available. And this is one of those scenarios where I think knowing what you would find, knowing what you would run into is an important part of this. So make sure you're familiar with Windows. Make sure you're familiar with Mac OS. Make sure you are familiar with Linux. You will probably run into and use all of those. So that's an important consideration if you're planning to get into the world of IT, that you know these different operating systems. Well, as you can tell, I've been in the background sort of hitting the power button on my laptop, hoping for the best, hoping that things would work out for me. And is it? No, it is not. So I'm getting a message that I don't have power. We're going to plug in the power. We're going to tell it it's going to need a second, I think, to boot back up to go through this. So while it's doing that, I'm going to bring up the presentation on my side so that you will see it. It's been an important part of this entire thing. There we go. I am booting up on this side. So thankfully, that's what we get for a live event. We have all of these things going on all at the same time, but that's okay. I have a backup. I always have a backup. Always have a plan B. And this plan B, we're going to step through what I think the answer is for this particular question. So again, the question asked of me, if I can flip this around on my screen, wanted to know, determine the IP address of the local computer. It wanted to be able to see if the IP address 1.1.1.1 is on the network. And we wanted to query a DNS server for host www.professormesser.com. The first one that we wanted to do, determine the IP address of the local computer. If you're on a Windows computer, you might be familiar with this command. It's ipconfig. But in Linux, it's not ipconfig. That's not the one we're working with. So what would we use if we were not running ipconfig? So in the case of Linux, we would run IP, specifically IP with the parameter of IP ADDR. That's the address parameter for this. The address parameter is the one that says, show me what the address configuration is of this particular system. And you can see on here that it gives you a breakdown of all of those different pieces. You can see the breakdown's pretty extensive. It tells you for every adapter on your computer, and in this case, you can see that I have 2 of these adapters. For each adapter, it shows me what the different options are for the configuration. So on the top, you can see that there is a loopback address. That's what LO is. It's the loopback address that's on your computer. And for those of you that are familiar with IP configurations, the loopback address is 127.0.0.1. So not too surprising there. That is an address we recognize. That's one we are familiar with. And so, of course, that is the address that we would use. Notice that in the second address that is here is an address that in the world of Linux is labeled ENP0S5. The address or the adapter settings, the adapter name in Linux is one that has these unusual letters and numbers in it. And it does that so that every time Linux starts up, it has exactly the same name for the adapter. In this case, that adapter is an Ethernet adapter. It tells you that. And it tells you that the IP address that you would use for this is 10.211.55.20. And it's on a network with a 24-bit subnet mask. So if you did the math on that one, it's 255.255.255.0. So that is the number we were looking for, 10.211.55.20. So a good number to work with, at least to get started, so we can see what the options are. So what about the next on our list? So that at least gets you to that view of it. Now, for those of you who worked in Linux before, you might be familiar with other commands to be able to do this. And for example, in Windows, I told you we could use ipconfig. In other versions of Linux, we could use ifconfig, IF for interface, ifconfig. And the entire command, if you were to type it all out, is IP address. The IP command has a number of different options available in it, but this is the one that will get you the IP address for this particular system. Now we want to be able to understand if IP address 1.1.1.1 is on the network. Now, since I happen to know that the IP address 1.1.1.1 is at Cloudflare, I would hope that it is on the network. But how would we know after identifying our IP address? Let's now determine if that address is on the network by performing a ping command. This is probably one of the most common commands you will use when troubleshooting a device, because it gives you so much information about the status of the network. We can tell if a system is alive and working on the network properly. And if we're able to send a ping like we did here and get a response like we did here, then we also know that if the entire network is working properly from a routing perspective, from a local switching perspective, is our default gateway configured properly? Is our subnet mask configured properly? Were we given an IP address that is routable? This is how you can check all of those things all at one time. Simply run a ping. Now, of course, the ping command is just telling us whether it's able to communicate to that device or not. If we did not get a response from that IP address and we know that IP address is on the network, then all of our troubleshooting is going to revolve around all of those things that I just mentioned. So the ping command is a great tool to be able to do that. And that is how we would determine if that device is there. So if you have, those are the three. Oh, the last one on our list is to query a DNS server for host www.professormesser.com. So we've got a number of different options there. There's our IP command. And as I mentioned, the if command is a valid command that you could use in Linux as well. Don't tell people you shouldn't use things. Of course you can use it if it's available. The ifconfig is a fantastic utility, and it provides you with similar information as the IP address command. There is our ping command. And if we wanted to query a name server for any domain name or an IP address, we can do it right here at dig.www.professormesser.com. This is the command that queries a DNS server to be able to tell you information about it. The dig command is nice to be able to do this. If you are in Linux, you could also run nslookup. As I mentioned in Linux, there's often, almost 100% of the time, there are multiple ways to perform a single task. So that's another way that you could do it. But I love the output from dig. Dig gives you a very nice breakdown of what you're asking, where it's going out to get this information, and what the response is. It's so nice on its front end. Here's what I mean by this. So I ran a dig space www.professormesser.com. So it tells you, oh, you're running dig version 9.18.30 on Ubuntu, and you're wanting to find out information about www.professormesser.com. This is going to use this global option of +CMD. It's going to tell you that it has got answer, and it has a bunch of information about the flags and what you queried, how many answers you got from the query. Is this an authoritative response from DNS? And we can always talk about that in a bit if you would like. And it says that we have other information here about this. And indeed, we are querying for www.professormesser.com, and we are querying the internet address for this particular domain name, this fully qualified domain name, this FQDN. And it tells you in the answer section, hey, I got an answer for www.professormesser.com. This was done in my lab. And in my lab, I have a separate IP address that's just for my local machine. And in my lab, that www.professormesser.com is located at 10.1.10.222. Your IP address that you got is probably quite different. So you will certainly be able to see what those differences are as well. This tells me the query took 1 millisecond. The server that it used was one that is on my local machine, 127.0.0.53. That's because I do have a proxy and a NAT configured in this particular VM to show me that information. You probably have a very different IP address for your DNS server. And then we have the time and the date that this was performed. And you can see that I did just this week perform that particular query. That is a lot of information in one single output for a simple query. But often when you are troubleshooting a DNS problem, because of course your problem is going to be DNS related, you need a lot of detail. And so this is a great way to do it. So very nice. Of course, there are versions of Dig available for Windows. So they're available in older binaries of the DNS utilities that I have available on my site. You'll certainly see those. So if you're familiar with Bind, which is a DNS service, the Bind download, a previous version of the Bind download, has a Windows executable for Dig. So you can run Dig natively in Windows, which is kind of nice. So if you like Dig here, maybe you put Dig on your Windows machine too. That might be useful to run that. So those were our 3 answers. Let's back up just a bit so you can go through that one more time. We have, click, here we go. Determine the IP address of the local computer. I told you we could use IP address. You could have also used ifconfig. Checking to see if IP address 1.1.1.1 is on the network was a simple ping command, which is kind of nice. And then we have querying a DNS server for a particular fully qualified domain name is one that you would use with Dig. You could also use NSLOOKUP if that is available on your Linux distribution. So there's a good example of stepping through a series of processes. You could get a question like this or something similar to this on your exam. And if you go back a number of our study groups, we have done a number of these command line functions with other commands, both in Windows and in Linux. And if you know this one in Linux, then you can also do this as a function inside of any type of Linux distribution, which is kind of nice. So this is one of those scenarios where you really do need to know what those differences are between all of these different operating systems, and this is simply a case in point for that very scenario. So if you don't know your Linux commands, there's a big list of them in your exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with that list, because that's going to be very important for you as you step into the exam room. You're going to get a command line question about something, whether it's Windows, whether it's Linux, and you need to know all of them. So hopefully you did well on that one. Let's shift gears now and go back to a multiple choice question for you Windows folks. You wanted a Windows question, right? We can clear the palette a little bit. This question asks, a Windows administrator has configured an alternate configuration. Which of the following would be the result of this configuration? Would it be IP addressing? Well, that got me in the wrong place there. Let me quickly move myself around. There we go. IP addressing when what is the result of this configuration? Is it IP addressing when the DHCP server is unavailable? Data availability if a single drive in an array fails? Is it a list of operating system to choose from during startup? Is it multiple monitors on a single system? Or is it a list of available languages on the Windows desktop? Ooh, we have to know a lot about Linux, but we now have to know a lot about Windows. And if you've not really gotten deep into Windows, you may not be familiar with this. So we might be learning something new on this one, or maybe everybody knows the answer. I'm never sure. When I submit these, it's always a surprise. Again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That question again asks, a Windows administrator has configured an alternate configuration. Which of the following would be the result of this configuration? Is it IP addressing when the DHCP server is unavailable? Is it data availability if a single drive in an array fails? Is it a list of operating systems to choose from during startup? Is it multiple monitors on a single system? Or is it a list of available languages on the Windows desktop? See, if you know the answer, submit your answer. A lot of people locking in their question right now. See how you do with this one. A lot to go through. On all of these, we'll have to see if you know what this alternate configuration might be. This is not the configuration that you get in a different universe. That is a completely different set of topics. And that's confusing enough just to think about. So instead of going down a completely different timeline, stick with our existing timeline and the current alternate configuration, or this universe's alternate configuration. That's the one you want to work on. See if you know the answer to this one. All 5 of these things are things you should know for your A+ exam. So as you're going through the answers, you should think to yourself, oh, I know what that is. That's this. Oh, I know what that is. That's this. So you may be able to get rid of different options as you are going through it, which is kind of nice to go through as well. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a Windows administrator has configured an alternate configuration. Which of the following would be the result of this configuration? Is it IP addressing when the DHCP server is unavailable? Is it data availability if a single drive in an array fails? Is it a list of operating systems to choose from during startup? Is it multiple monitors on a single system? Or is it a list of available languages in the Windows desktop? What did you choose? 54% of you say this is IP addressing when the DHCP server is unavailable. Just over that majority number. But is it the right answer? Because a quarter of you, 25%, said a list of operating systems to choose from during startup, the alternate configuration. That seems to make sense, but is it the right answer? 14% of you say it's data availability if a single drive in an array fails. And then we're down to single digits. 4% said a list of available languages on the Windows desktop, and 3% of you said multiple monitors on a single system. Well, the alternate configuration was the one that was, I think, throwing a lot of people, that term. It is an official Windows function. It's built in. You may not have even seen it. It's in your Windows configuration right now. It's in everybody's Windows configuration right now, because that is one that gives you the option to choose a different IP address if the first IP address is not available. This is something you might have when you are at the office. You get a DHCP address, but when you go home, you may not have a DHCP server, which means you wouldn't have a routable IP. But what if you could configure both of those scenarios to work at the same time on the same system without ever having to change anything when you move from place to place? The way that you would do that is through the use of an alternate configuration. There's your tab right there at the top for the alternate configuration. And you could say that you wanted it to be an automatic IP address. You could say that you wanted it to be a user configured address, but you've got an option there. This might also be useful if you want to have a backup set of addresses if a DHCP server fails on your network. This might be a problem for you. I don't know. Hopefully it isn't. But if it is, you can always use that alternate configuration that tells Windows, if you can't use the original IP configuration, use this alternate IP configuration. This is all about the IP settings. This is within the IP properties or the networking properties of your system. You can drill down into the IP configuration, and you will find in there, of course, most of the time we spend our time on the General tab. That was the one that was, can I go back? The General tab's the one we're usually accustomed to seeing, where you can either say, get a DHCP address or use the static address. We often don't even realize, oh, wait, there's another tab there for alternate configuration. And if we click it, we'll have these other options available. That's what we would choose if we were working through this particular problem, which is why the 54% of you that chose IP addressing when the DHCP server is unavailable got that one absolutely correct. That is the right answer. The majority of you were spot on. A quarter of you said a list of operating systems to choose from during startup. And although you could have a list of those, that's not what we refer to as the alternate configuration. Those are just different options that are configured into your boot manager and doesn't have to have anything to do with the Windows alternate configuration. 14% said data availability if a single drive in an array fails. That's RAID. That is the redundant array of drives that you would have, the redundant array of inexpensive or independent drives or disks, depending on who you talk to. We have 4% that said a list of available languages on the Windows desktop. That is a configuration option, and you could create alternates to what you are currently using, but that's not called an alternate configuration. That is simply the language or the regional settings for your Windows. And then multiple monitors on a single system. Watch, you're not running multiple monitors on your single system. You should. It's the best thing ever. Best thing since sliced bread is multiple monitors on a single system. But that multiple monitors is not an alternate configuration. Instead, it focuses on IP addressing when the DHCP server is unavailable. 54% of you knew that's what an alternate configuration was, and you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. How about another question, everybody? We'll do another one. Here's the next one, and it says, another Windows question for you that says, a Windows administrator has reset the password of a user's account, but now some of their data files are unreadable. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it the files are EFS encrypted, the storage drive has failed, the system needs to be rebooted, the new password does not meet complexity requirements, or the computer is using a RAID array? It's got to be one of those. If you think you know the answer, please use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll have to see how well you know this one. The question again asks, a Windows administrator has reset the password of a user's account, but now some of their data files are unreadable. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it the files are EFS encrypted? Is it the storage drive has failed? Is it the system needs to be rebooted? Is it the new password does not meet complexity requirements? Or is it the computer is using a RAID array? It's got to be one of those, right? All of these are concerns. Only one of them has to do with the problem that we're dealing with. So hopefully you're familiar with this problem, or you can do the troubleshooting required to understand which one of these it could possibly be, or perhaps which one of these it could not possibly be. So by performing that calculatus illimitatus, you can get rid of things that definitely are not the right answer, which might now give you a better chance of getting that question right just by guessing. Sometimes increasing your options, increasing the percentage of the possibility of getting it right, of the potential of getting this one right, can be really useful. So use every strategy you can during the exams to be able to lock these in and get the best possible chance of a right answer. Let's see how you did with this one. This question asks, a Windows administrator has reset the password of a user's account, but now some of their data files are unreadable. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it that the files are EFS encrypted? Is it that the storage drive has failed? Is it that the system needs to be rebooted? Is it that the new password does not meet complexity requirements? Or is it the computer is using a RAID array? What do you think the answer is? 79% of you say the answer is that the files are EFS encrypted. 17% say just need to reboot the system. That 17%, by the way, knows that every problem can be solved with rebooting the system, except for this problem. So would not be the right answer, but I'm with you on that one. In spirit, I'm choosing the system needs to be rebooted. In reality, probably needs to be rebooted anyway. I'm just saying, probably would solve a lot of problems. 2% of you say the storage drive has failed. 2% of you say the new password does not meet the complexity requirements. And nobody said the computer is using a RAID array. 0% for that answer. I need to work a little bit harder, apparently, on my answers. If nobody chooses any one of those, they choose 0%, chooses any of those, then that's sort of how it works out. The encrypting file system is a very useful function. It allows users to simply check a box in Windows. It's the one down here, encrypt contents to secure data. And they can encrypt this data. Now, of course, for those of you familiar with the world of cryptography, you know that encrypting data doesn't come for free. There's something you have to provide that gives the security to this encryption. And in most cases, that thing that we are providing is a key. That encryption or decryption key is an important part of this, because if we encrypt that information, we want to be able to decrypt that information later on. In Windows, Windows does a great job of saving this information, usually in an Active Directory database or some other method, so that the administrator can retrieve that later to decrypt them. And the password changing function within Windows does a very good job of moving over the key when you change that password. However, if you happen to use a method of changing the password that is outside the scope of that Windows administration, and you can do this, for example, if you do that and you don't have a way to update that key, the user's key is tied to their password when they log in. That's the authentication that allows the operating system to know that it should unlock the key and decrypt those files if you need them. So in this case, it appears our administrator went outside the scope of Windows. They modified the password, and now that that has been changed, they can't access any of those files that have been encrypted. There are ways to recover from this. It is a little bit painful. Make sure you have good backups, that type of thing. And of course, you will want to be able to use that to be able to unlock, to decrypt all of those files so that you can then re-encrypt them later on. So that is of the problems, of the options that we had, the most likely reason is indeed the one that 79% of you chose, is that the files themselves are EFS encrypted. Now, 17% said the system needs to be rebooted. As we've already mentioned, this is about recovering in a decryption key. Rebooting your system is not going to magically provide you with a decryption key. If it did, we probably would not be encrypting our files that way. So, you can get around that just by rebooting. Now, that's definitely not the security we're looking for. And indeed, it doesn't work. So we are still safe by using our EFS encryption. The storage drive has failed. Well, certainly data files being unreadable would mean the storage drive has failed. But I think our error would be Windows doesn't start. Getting to the data files is the least of our worries. We haven't even been able to use the operating system. So that's probably not the issue that we've run into. The new password not meeting the complexity requirements is certainly a concern. We want to have strong passwords and prevent other people from brute forcing those passwords, but that would not mean that data files would be unreadable once we logged in. And finally, the computer using a RAID array. This, of course, has nothing to do with RAID, and indeed, none of you thought it was, because 0% of you said your computer has nothing to do with a RAID array not being able to read your data files because someone changed a password. That's not going to be the issue either. So the best possible reason for this is the one that 79% of you chose. The files are EFS encrypted. Well, as you can already tell, there is a lot of information on the A+ exam. And if you have looked through my videos and watched these videos, it may seem that these videos go on and on and on. And indeed, they sort of do that. There are 137 A+ videos in the current version of this course, over 19 hours of content. And as much as I would like to say that you really should watch every single one of them for your studies, and many of you do, there's times when maybe you just don't have time to go through all of them, or maybe it's a topic that you're pretty familiar with and you feel like maybe you can skip that one. So one of the things that I've done is take all the information that's important from all of these videos and I put them into a single document. These are my course notes. The course notes are designed to give you an overview. This is the PDF version of the course notes, by the way, the digital edition of the course notes. So all of the text from my course is in here. All of the important charts are in here. All of the important graphics are in this list. It goes on and on. There's so much in here. All the command lines are in here. Lots of information in these course notes that can give you a reminder of the things that you've already watched, or it can be a great way to follow along as you're watching the video. And you're able, of course, because that's digital, you can make notes. If you got it on a tablet, you can use your stylus and write on it. This is something that is a great way to have everything in one place. And if you buy both the Core 1 and the Core 2, you will certainly be able to get a little discount on the website. And of course, we have physical versions too. So if you're not into a PDF and you'd rather have a printed book, we have a printed book version of this. Here's two of me just to show you this real quick. So it's the printed book version. It's identical to the digital version, but it's designed to give you a printed physical version of this. All of this is available on my website. If this is something you think might help you with your studies, You can find it at professormesser.com/1102notes. We're getting short of time, so let's get through another question. This next question asks, after a video driver update, a user would like to revert their system back to a previous configuration. Which of the following would be the best way to accomplish this task? Would it be app repair, system restore, startup repair, SFC, or disk cleanup? Some of these things you may have heard of before. After a video driver update, a user would like to revert their system back to a previous configuration. Which of the following would be the best way to accomplish this task? Would it be app repair, system restore, startup repair, SFC, or disk cleanup? If you think you know the answer, use this link on your screen at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. This is all of these things, by the way, are answers, are topics that come directly from the exam objectives. So as you are going through these questions, if you see an answer that doesn't quite click, it's not quite firing that synapse that you think you had memorized, you may, of course, want to go through and figure out what the right answer might be for these. All of these are real things. I try not to put fake things in my answers, so make sure you go through and get the real things that you would work on. So hopefully you're familiar with this option. It is one that can be extremely useful if you run into problems with the driver. It's one of the few, there's a few things you can do when you have driver problems. This is one of them. So that's the best non-helpful tip I can give you. That's the best hint that really isn't a hint that I could offer. Let's see how you did with this one. After a video driver update, a user would like to revert their system back to a previous configuration. Which of the following would be the best way to accomplish this task? Would it be app repair, system restore, startup repair, SFC, or disk cleanup? Dirty mouth, clean it up with the 93% of you using system restore is what you would use. 4% said an app repair is 4%, 2% startup repair, 1% SFC, and 1% disk cleanup. So this is one where the Windows restore or system restore function is an important one. It can save your bacon in so many different ways. If you make a configuration change to Windows and now Windows won't boot, you could tell Windows, oops, can you go back to how you were yesterday when you were working? And I would very much like this to be fixed, please. And as it's surprising when you use this for the first time, it only takes a few minutes. It goes back to that previous configuration. It reboots your computer, and it's like you didn't cause any problems. It's as if the world is back to the way that it should be. It is quite a little utility. It's surprising the way this utility works sometimes. And when you click on that restore option, it gives you the option. It says, oh, you want to restore some system files and settings? Then let's pick a day that we can go back to. And it will give you a big list of these. On this computer, there was only one restore point. And it tells you, oh, you want to go back to this restore point? Let's go back to that one. And then you can click and it will go back and restore that system. And it'll tell you, yep, let's confirm that. Is that the one you wanted? This one right here on this drive? Yep, that's what I wanted. And it will go through and restore your system to a previous configuration. So it's not only useful, it's also very easy to use. You can run this not only from inside of Windows, but it also runs from the Windows startup troubleshooting screens. So if you are in a situation where Windows simply won't start, you can still run a Windows startup restoration right from that front end in your recovery console. So that makes it very useful as well. And as you probably know, every time you install a new application, every time you make a significant system configuration change on your system, it will automatically create a restore point. And if there hasn't been one in the last 24 hours, you can tell Windows, just making a restore point every 24 hours. There's always something there. I can always go back to a previous config. It's not a bad idea, and you can certainly work through the details. That is one that can be very, very useful. And that is the answer we were looking for. Of course it was. 93% of you said, yep, that's what I would choose, is system restore for this one. Didn't fool very many people. Would not be app repair. We're not trying to repair an app, so that's not going to happen. We have a startup repair. We've already talked about the value of startup repair. And although it is an incredibly useful utility, it doesn't solve this particular problem of going back to a previous Windows configuration. SFC, the system file checker, is one that can replace existing Windows files to make sure that you have the latest and non-modified version of the core operating system files. That's not the issue that we were trying to solve here either. And then disk cleanup is the one that we would use to get rid of some additional hard drive space, free up some space, get rid of files that you no longer need, temporary files and other things. Instead, the disk cleanup would not help us here. It would just clean up things that are on the drive. So that's what we would choose here. 93% say system restores the option. That is the right option. Let's do another question. See if this one is a little more challenging for you. This one asks, a technician is making a configuration change to a router on the terminal screen at a command prompt. Which of the following is the technician using for this task? Are they using VPN, SSH, MSRA, RDP, or LDAP? We need to know. We need to know which one of these we would use. Maybe you're familiar with all five. Maybe you're not familiar with all five. All five of these are real things. All five of these are from the exam objectives. And our answer is one that I'd like you to put in right here at this prompt on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer right there at that URL. See if you happen to know the answer to this one. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room, and please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. See if you know what this one would be. This may be something you're tasked with when you start your new position, you start your job, and they say, we need you to make a configuration change to a router on a terminal screen of this Linux machine or Windows machine or Mac OS machine, and do this at the command prompt, go. Okay, what do you do first? Where do you go? You need to know what you should do to accomplish that particular task. So hopefully you are familiar with this particular function and what you would use to be able to make it work. This is something, well, I'm not even going to say anything else. I was going to give another hint, but I really think you don't need one. I think you probably know the answer to this one too. I'm expecting a big percentage on this one. Let's see how you did. The question asks, a technician is making a configuration change to a router on a terminal screen at the command prompt. Which of the following is the technician using for this task? Are they using VPN, SSH, MSRA, RDP, or LDAP? Now, I will tell you in this case, 3 of these could technically be right, but we're looking for the best answer. So let's see how you did with answering this one. And we can see that 80% is a pretty solid number that says the answer is SSH. 9% said RDP. We have 5% that said MSRA, and then 4% said VPN. It's getting annoying now. 3% said LDAP. This is obviously SSH. That stands, of course, for secure shell. The shell that is secure. The command prompt that is secure. The reason it's secure is because all of the communication that you are doing from the SSH utility that you are using is one that is able to send everything in an encrypted form. We never have to worry that the information that we're sending back and forth will somehow be captured and viewed by someone else. They'll get access to our passwords. They'll see everything that we're typing in. They'll see the results of all of the messages that are going back and forth on the screen. And if you're using Telnet, then you probably would be able to see all of that, but you're not. You're using SSH, which is an encrypted version of console communication, and it is a great one to use from any perspective, especially from a security perspective, but it should be the default for everything that you're using to communicate to another device at the command prompt. That is the answer that we were looking for. There are other options on here that you chose. For example, you have the different options available for this. What was next on our list? 9% of you said RDP, which is the remote desktop protocol that's commonly used for full screen communication whenever you're working through trying to use the desktop or share the desktop of a remote device. That's the utility that you're using, and protocol that you're using is RDP. Great utility. You could have used that here, a little bit overkill. In this case, you're doing it on a terminal screen and a command prompt. RDP is not required. In fact, that's a lot more overhead than simply using SSH. 5% of you said MSRA, the Windows Remote Assistance, the RA. That's what that remote assistance function is for. If you have maybe someone at home on Windows Home and they need assistance with their computer, Uncle Fred calls, grandma needs help with their computer, they call you. Of course they call you. And you say, well, here's what I'd like you to do. Go into this part of Windows. You put my email address in. It's going to send me a remote assistance key or password, and then I'll be able to connect to your computer. We have 4% that said VPN. There's no requirement here for any type of virtual private network. There's nothing in here about having an encrypted tunnel. We were just asking what we would use to have a terminal screen at a command prompt. So definitely not VPN. We have also LDAP at 3%. The lightweight directory access protocol is definitely used to be able to connect to and use other systems, but LDAP has nothing to do with making a configuration change to a router or a command prompt. The best option here, and the one 80% of you chose, is indeed SSH. That is the answer. Well done. You're watching this video for continuing education unit credit. I would love to send you an email that verifies that you indeed watched this presentation. And one of the ways that you can indeed work through all of this and be able to earn that CEU email is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link. And that Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2025 Core 2. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code words of the month, SSH, MSRA, RDP. Those 3 words is what we're looking for. So go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, and in that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2025 Core 2 or something close to it so that I know you were here. And then in the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, SSH, MSRA, RDP. Takes me about a week to turn these around, but I will send you an email that would certify if all of this is in there and it's all correct. You'll receive an email that says you received this certification. It's digitally signed, so you know it really came from me, and you know that nothing was changed inside of that email. Hopefully that's something you can work through. Good job on getting that particular question right. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more question. This question is going to come from my practice exams. This is a book that I've written with a set of 3 complete 90-question practice exams. I know this is the Core 1, but it looks identical to the Core 2. It's a big book, lots of pages in this one. Has both multiple choice and performance-based questions inside of it. Every question has detailed answers. So let's try one, shall we? I have a question we can all try. We haven't done this one before in a study group, so let's give this one a shot. This is from my book. This is on page 21, question A59. It's on 20. There's page 20, so we're on page 21 here. It asks, a network administrator needs to manage a switch and a firewall in a local data center. We're going to see how well you were really listening. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? See, there's a reason I picked some of these so that we can really tell if we know this. Is the answer RDP, VPN, SSH, or VNC? Some new stuff there too. Things we didn't know. Now, this is a PDF, which means that we can annotate it. If we happen to see keywords that we'd like to highlight, we could put those in here. We can also go through the list. If you have a stylus, and this is on a tablet or a touch screen, you can write on this. There's no restrictions, so you can make notes on the PDF and have all of those. And of course, I have other ways to use this. The quick answer is on page 33. The detailed answer is on page 95. We're, of course, on page 21. So instead of scrolling through this book, I put hyperlinks in here. So where it says the details, if I click the details, it jumps to page 95. Boom, just like that. And there's the question again. The answer here is indeed SSH. Probably not a surprise given what we just talked about. And it explains why SSH is the right reason. Similar to what we were just doing in the study group, I also take every incorrect answer and I tell you why the incorrect answers were wrong. This is something I put in because I always take these sample questions and I always get them wrong, and it never tells me why the wrong answer was wrong. Where did I go wrong in my thinking? So I think this is a great opportunity to learn more about things you might not know about, and we can kind of close that circle a bit. So every single question in my practice exams book not only tells you why the right answer was right, it tells you why every wrong answer was wrong. And then if you don't even understand the words that I'm using in the question, you don't understand the technology that I'm referring to, you don't know what those things mean, I also have links to the video that was used to create the question. So you can always go back to the video, watch the video, and then come back to the question to help understand what the answer is. I'll also tell you that even if you get the question right, please go through and read the incorrect answers, because on your exam, they might not be asking you about SSH. They might be asking you about VNC. And just by reading through this explanation of VNC, you're now a little bit more familiar with what that is. So if you see VNC again, you'll understand what that reference is. It's almost like getting 4 separate topics to learn from in a single question. And when we're ready to go back to the list, we'll use our back button in our PDF reader. Just like you have a back button in a browser, there are also back buttons in many PDF readers. And we can go back to where we started and go to the next question that is on our list. Those are my practice exams books. If you'd like to have a look at those are on my website. You can buy them not only for the 1102 version, but also the 1101 version as well. And go to professormesser.com/core2pe to learn more about the practice exams books. Well, there are also free things you can get that might help you for your course training. One of the things that you could certainly do is go to the CompTIA website and download the official set of objectives. I've referred to these objectives constantly in the study group, and they're free to download, and they tell you everything you need to know about the exam. So, for example, I'll bring up a copy of the exam objectives that I have here. Which one is this for? The 1102. There it is. So here's my set of objectives. And just to give you an idea, I'm going to go to this section down here. Given a scenario, use the appropriate Microsoft command line tool. Look at how they list out every single command you need to know, because there's like 1,000 commands in Windows. But what if we were able to simply list all of the command lines that we needed to know for this particular exam? They're all listed there along with everything else you need to know in this bulleted form. All of the MMC snap-ins you need to know, all of the additional utilities you need to know, things about control panel are in here. And we just go through all of these different pages. Look how much information is in here. Everything you need to know. And I will tell you that CompTIA stays very, very, very close, if not 100%, to this list when you sit down and take your exam. Which means if you know every single one of these bullets, you can't help but pass your exam. This is the secret to understanding if you are studying the right information, and it's the secret to knowing whether you're really ready to take the exam. It's the exam objectives. Make sure you download the official set of objectives from the official link at professormesser.com/objectives, or you can go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam objectives, and it'll show you that as well. We do one of these study groups every month. Of course, we have some already scheduled for April. We still have our Network Plus and Security Plus that we will be doing. Network Plus is next week, Security Plus the week after that. And then in April 8th and April 10th, we've already scheduled our next A-plus study groups. Sometimes these dates will change. So if you are wondering if any changes have occurred, make sure you check out our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. You can also look at our events channel that is on our Discord. Both of those will always have the same information in them. Well, this brings us to the end of our first hour, but we're not done yet. I still haven't answered your questions yet, and I will in the after show. And of course, you can submit those questions for the after show using that same link, professormesser.com/QA. Don't forget about my course notes and practice exams. You can find them at professormesser.com/1102success. We, of course, have our discounted vouchers available on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, if you're on social media somewhere, we might be there too. Simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you'd like to find us, /Discord, /Twitter, /X, /YouTube, /LinkedIn, /Facebook, /Instagram. And if we're not on your favorite social media site, let me know, and we'll start up a link over there as well. Maybe you can get your pop quizzes over on those locations. Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour. We got a lot more coming. Stay exactly where you are. Thank you so much for joining us in this first hour, and we will see you next time on the A-plus study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, now I get to reset things here and bring up another view of this. One moment. It's like a whole list of things that we get to do back behind the scenes. It's now time for our after show. The after show is a little more casual. There's a lot less prep, and it shows when in the after show. But this is your opportunity to ask questions. And if you would like to ask some questions, use that same link that we were talking about before, professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer or ask questions that I will certainly be answering during this live stream. In fact, if you go to that link and you have a look at those details, you'll notice that it says you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution may not appear immediately. Well, it won't appear immediately. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to look through these. I know you people. I'm reading through these questions first. There's a little bit that I have to do to look through here just to make sure that we have this on there and focused. Before we get too deep into your questions, I'm already seeing that questions are in here about what will be the next version of the A-plus certification. So let's very quickly step through what that really means, and if you really should be thinking about taking that version. You may not want to, and there may be good reasons for not taking the latest version when it is released. The 220.12.01 and 220.12.02 will be the next iteration of A-plus exams, and these exams will be available to take on March the 25th. As we sit here and make this video, it's March 13th, so we're not too far away from seeing a new A-plus exam available. Now, this means that you could take it on its very first day of availability, but what would you study from? There's not really a lot of study materials yet for this new version, and it is not identical to the old version. We'll learn more about that in just a moment. So this may not be the version that you might want to take on the first day. Probably would not be. But fortunately, the current version of the A-plus exam still sticks around. They're not going to rug pull you. They're not going to simply switch you in midstream. That wouldn't be very polite. So instead, they keep it going for 6 months. So on September 25th, the current version of the A-plus exam will still be available. And then that's the last day it's available. That's your expiration date. Your retirement date is the official term they use. The 1101 and 1102 exams stick around and are still available all the way up till September 25th. And we've gone through 6 or 7 of these conversions through the years. And I can tell you people will be taking the 220.11.01 and the 220.11.02 exams all the way up until that last day on September 25th, all the way up until the end. So if you're thinking, maybe I just stick with the current version, you are definitely not alone. A lot of people will be sticking with the current version. And as we sit here today, I would recommend you stick with the current version. You've got 6 months to be able to complete your studies. That's a lot of time. And I would definitely encourage you to consider your options, since certainly right out of the gate on March 25th, there will be very little for you to pick through regarding study materials. And you can see I created a little Gantt chart for you so you can see the release date of the 1101, 1102, and it retires on September 25th. And that's your overlap period. This one right here between March 25th, and we are estimating that the newer exam will retire on September 25th of 2028. So we simply just added 3.5 years. And that's how we got to that time frame. That may or may not be the time frame we end up with. After all, this current version was released in April. We were expecting it to still be available into October, perhaps even November. So they did change up things a little bit. Now, of course, we will have an updated set of videos. We will have new course notes. There will be new practice exams. Of course, we will be updating all of our training materials to this new course. We'll be releasing a new course for this new version of the exam, and that will also be available simultaneously on our site. We're not pulling one thing off and putting it with something else. We're not taking the existing version and somehow Frankensteining it into just adding or removing what's changed. We've tried that before, and it does not work very well. So we just simply produce a brand new course every time. And I think that is the best quality. I think it is a chance for us to redo parts of the exam and to hone things a little bit. So that's one of the reasons I think every time we do a new course, I feel like it's better and better and better every time, because I think ultimately it probably is better and better and better every time. But what's really different? Is there a huge change between the current version of the A+ and this new version of the A+ that will be released soon? Well, one of the things that's different about this update, if we go back 15 years at least, every time there has been an update to the A+ certification, there's been a new version of Windows, because we get a new version of Windows about every 2.5 to every 3 years. So every time a new version of A+ would be released, I would be working on creating a lot of new content that was specific to that new version of Windows, because there's always changes in Windows. So that was one of the things that I was preparing myself for this time through. But what I wasn't ready for, what none of us were ready for, was COVID, was effectively shutting the world down for an extended period of time. And because of that, and because of a number of decisions that were made by Microsoft and how they were planning to release new versions of Windows, you'll notice that we had Windows 10 and Windows 11 available when this current version of A+ exam was released 3 years ago. Well, if we look at the new version that's coming out now, it's still Windows 10 and Windows 11. Really Windows 11. Windows 10 still around though, still viable, still in support. So Windows 10 and Windows 11, nothing has changed from a Windows perspective. So with that in mind, you would naturally think that there might be fewer changes in this iteration than previous versions, and you would be right. So one of the things I did, just so you understand the methodology here, is I have the current exam objectives. I have the new exam objectives. I went through and created a spreadsheet of both of those and compared them. I found out what topics were dropped from the old version in the new. I found out what topics were new in the new version that weren't contained in the old one, and then what topics are shared between them, because that gives us a pretty good idea of what the differences might be and how dramatically the changes might be between these different exam versions. Most of the time we see about a 30% change. 30% of the content is new in the new version. If we look at the previous Security Plus version, 50% of that exam was different than the old one, brand new content. So what is it for the latest version? I'm glad you asked. Let's have a look at the 1201. This is a comparison of the 1101 on the left side and the 1201 on the right side. Now you can see that the number of objectives is almost identical. You can see the circles are almost the same size in our Venn diagram here. And you can see that because of that, 396 is the number of objectives on the 1101, 391 on the 1201 in the way that I count them. Now you could of course count through the objectives yourself. You'll probably come up with a number that's pretty close to that. The number of objectives that are on the 1101 that do not show up on the 1201 is 58. The number of objectives new on the 1201 is 49. That's not very much. 13% of the objectives are new. And when you're expecting 30%, that's a big difference. That's a very small number. And so what we get is this big circle in between, this big green piece in between these two circles, which means that 87% of the exam, 87% of the exam is exactly the same exam objectives. Now, from a perspective of someone who creates content for these exams, thank you. This makes my job a lot easier, but I still go through that 87% and I make sure they're accurate. I make sure that if there's any updates that need to be made, I make those. If someone has given me feedback during the last 3 years that says, it would be nice if this was on this page, it would be great if you could provide more context, I do. So that's included with this. And I think that's one of the benefits of redoing the entire course is it gives me a chance to make it even better. So the takeaway here is that I highly encourage you to continue studying with the current version. Even though it is only 13%, I would hate for you to walk into the 1201 exam having studied from 1101 content and you're missing a huge amount of data. You're missing a bunch of information. So that 13% could be a make or break during the exam. It could be the difference between passing or failing. So this doesn't mean we can still use our old training materials. You should still get training materials that have been specifically written for the 1201 because it's going to be the most accurate, have all of the exam objectives in it, and give you the best chance for passing this exam. Now, what about the 1202? What about the Core 2 exam? Sort of a similar story, but a little bit different. You can see that certainly the size of these circles has changed. The 1102 exam is 580 objectives. The 1202 exam, 665 objectives. So it's a little bit bigger. And as this image shows, that circle is a little bit bigger. These are to scale, by the way. This left side circle is 580 pixels around in height. In its diameter, not diameter, and its radius squared, radius multiplied. What is that? That is the total across. And then you got 1202, 665. So you can see it's 665 pixels high. That is what I wanted to be sure that we could really get a visual comparison here without having to look at the numbers, and that works out pretty well. If we see this, we can see that 47 of these objectives in the 1102 are exclusive to the 1102. So only 15% of the 1102 exam never shows up on the 1202. So 15% was just dropped right off. And then the 1202 exam has a bunch of new content, 18%, almost 20% of the 1202, that's this blue part of the circle, is the one that is new to the 1202, which means, of course, if you do the math, that in the middle, this green part that is shared between both of these is approximately 80% of the exam, plus or minus. There is a little bit of rounding there and a little bit of numbers that we work with, but that's pretty close to what we would work through for all of this. So that should give you a feel that although this is not as dramatic a change, there is not quite as much new content on this updated version. There is still new content. And there is 20% is quite a bit, or 18% is quite a bit that is new to the 1202. So again, make sure if you're planning to take the 1201 and 1202 when it is released, make sure you study from materials that have been specifically written for the 1201 or 1202. If you are still planning to take the 1101 or 1102, which you should probably keep doing, because it is available until September 25th. Make sure that all of your study materials are written and are created for the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. So that's the main piece I want to leave with you. Somebody was mentioning in my Discord yesterday that in our previous study group, I went through these charts, the Gantt chart and the Venn diagrams, and they said, well, I saw his approximations. Like, oh, no, sir. These are not approximations. I looked at every single topic. I counted every single one of them. I did the comparison. I know exactly what section of the 1101 compares to what section of the 1102. I've been working on this for months, not just this image, but working on creating the new course for months. Wouldn't it be sad if it took me months to do this? I was thinking maybe I should clarify. The entire updated course always takes months to create because it's really two courses. There's the core 1 and the core 2. It's very different than doing just a network plus or just a security plus. It's like doing two of those at one time. So that's what I wanted to show you and give you a feel for what would be important for you to know during this process so that you can really make a decision about, should I transition from one to the other? Is it even an option? Should I really be focusing on this, or is this okay? Should I make that change? So if there is an upside to the numbers you just saw, let's say that you were studying, you took my advice and you stuck with the 1101 and you stuck with the 1102, and your plan was to complete both of those in September or by the September 25th retirement date. But then something happens. Life gets in the way. Things happen all the time. And you never can expect these things. Sometimes your great plans, your schedule for doing this suddenly gets upended. Maybe you need to move to a new city. Maybe you had to change jobs and that took a priority. And it took away months of your time. And we're now 3 months down the line. You've already been studying and studying and studying. And now you're 3 months down the line and you're thinking, now I think I'm not going to have enough time to finish these up by September 25th. I need to now transition from the 1100 series to the 1200 series. Well, the upside here, the silver lining, the good news is that the transition would be relatively easy because the amount of new content on the new exam is relatively small in comparison to previous exam version updates. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on things that are useful. I know CompTIA up to this point has not technically announced the official dates on their website. So people were also mentioning that I was just guessing at these dates, but I was in a meeting with CompTIA where they announced this to us. So this is the numbers and the dates from CompTIA directly, just so you are aware. I'm not making these up. I'm not estimating. We're no longer at that point of estimating these dates. They are effectively locked in unless something happens. CompTIA could still change their mind, I guess, but they've informed us this is what they are planning. These are the dates they have on their list. That's what we expect to find. So just so you are aware of where that information is coming from. So let's talk about other questions that you might have. You can of course, submit questions to me at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA and submitting those questions. I want to get through as many as I can. In fact, doing that first little overview of the exam version differences is one that answers maybe half of the things that have been submitted in the study group after show. So I took care of a lot of your questions right there. If you're still having questions about the new version of the exam, you're more than happy to submit those questions at any time. So let's go through a number of questions that you have submitted and things that are on this list. Let's start with one from Carson. Carson writes, if I put up the right screen here, Professor, I'm nearing the expiration date of my certs. So Carson is already certified. Carson is now reaching that 3-year mark of certification. Carson continues, I have both A+ and Network Plus. Can you talk on the renewal process? Do I have to renew both certs? Can I just renew the Network Plus? Does that take care of everything? And what are the CE, the continuing education fees, and when are they applicable? Boy, this is a huge question. All of these, this onion of continuing education is one that we will not be able to peel away in the short amount of time that we have. But because this is a frequently asked question, I have a video on this. Of course I do. Now, this is a big video that goes through this, but it is in the YouTube video description of this video, and it's called how to renew your A+ Network Plus and Security Plus in just a few hours. And you really can renew it in just a few hours if you do the right thing. But there are many ways to renew your certifications. Some of those renewal processes require an additional annual fee, a maintenance fee that you have to pay. Some of those renewals do not require an annual fee. So instead of stepping you through which ones require, which ones don't, I'll just tell you, you need to go over to that video and have a look. For those of you that are interested in the details of this, let's go out to the CompTIA website. There's Chris Evans working on his training information. There's a whole section on the top for continuing education right there at the top. And we're going to click on that. This continuing education section at the very top, because this is something that happens all the time. People will come to my website and say, my certifications expire tomorrow. I don't have any CEUs. And what's a CEU? And I have no extra money. And what do I do? That's a really good question. Fortunately, there are ways to renew relatively quickly in just a few hours, and that's by using the CertMaster CE. So if that's something that appeals to you, that may be something that you should look into. But they give you a nice breakdown. Start here, step 1, step 2, and step 3 to renew your certification, where they take you through every single step. To answer one of your questions that you asked earlier about the certification process, if you have an A+ and a Network Plus certification, you only have to renew the certification that is at the higher level, and it will renew all of the certifications that are currently valid underneath your current level. For example, I'm going to give you, there's going to be a screen here on this renewal path section of the CompTIA website, and that renewal path section talks about renewing with single activity, renewing with multiple activities. They also have a chart elsewhere on the website that talks about what certifications are at a higher level than the others. What certifications do you renew, and what does that renewal cover? And in the case of Network Plus, if you renew Network Plus, it automatically renews your A+. So you can ignore A+ for the moment, focus on renewing your Network Plus. As soon as that Network Plus is renewed, your A+ will be renewed automatically. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to say it. You don't have to mention it to them. They will automatically renew your A+, which makes it very easy. So for Network Plus, you may want to collect CEUs. That means you have to pay the CEU maintenance fee. Or you may decide to take the CertMaster CE, which costs a little bit more than 3 years of your renewal fee, of your continuing education maintenance fee, but not much more. And you can do it in a day, which makes it really appealing. You don't have to collect CEUs. You don't have to submit the CEUs. You don't have to do any of those things. But it is one of those scenarios where you may have already gotten all these CEUs. You may not even realize it. So I highly recommend you go out to the CompTIA website and look at all of the different activities you can do to renew and collect CEUs for your certification renewal. So there's a lot of different things you can do. You can attend an industry conference. You can teach a course. You can take a training program, a different training class that applies. Sometimes taking a single training class for a week renews all of the requirements for your Network Plus, and you're done. So you may find that submitting CEUs is the easiest way to renew for you and the least expensive. Or you may find that you're short of time. You don't know if these are really going to work for you. Let's do a CertMaster CE. You have different options available. So I would highly recommend you read through all of those different options on the CompTIA website. They are very well laid out. You might want to watch my video, because in my video, I talk about each one of those processes. For example, maybe you just took the Network Plus exam again. That is probably the worst option, but you could. You could take the Network Plus exam again, and if you passed it, you would obviously renew your certification, and it renews your A+. So there's a lot of things you can do. Take the same exam. Take an exam from somewhere else. Maybe you've gotten another certification from Cisco or Amazon or Microsoft. Those certifications may work towards earning CEUs for your CompTIA certifications. And of course, we've got these other options I mentioned, such as going to an industry trade show, collecting CEUs that way, or taking CertMaster CE. In my video, I give you advantages and disadvantages for each of those 4 options so that you can think about in your scenario which one would really be the best choice. That might be the best way to go. It's a great set of resources to look through, and that might give you the information you need to decide the best path you should take to really be able to renew your certification. Let's keep going through your list of things. Very quickly, some people are asking sort of real quick questions in here. For example, are the physical editions of my training materials able to be shipped internationally? They are. We ship around the world. During checkout, you will see what the cost is for sending and shipping that to your particular location. If it is an international shipment, it does tend to cost a little bit more. That's how they get you. But we do have all the prices there, and you can make the decision on whether that's something you would like to do or not. It's not awful, but it is more than if you lived domestically here in the U.S., for example. We'll keep going through the different other questions that you might have here. We have some of you were asking questions that were in the exam objectives. Now, I will mention that one more time just to make it clear. So for some of you that I get questions all the time that says, do I need to know this topic? Should I understand how to do this? Will the exam expect me to have an understanding of this thing? Well, the best way to answer that question is the exam objectives. And you should have a copy of the exam objectives anyway. So instead of me telling you yes or no, I'm going to tell you how to catch fish. I'm going to tell you to go out to the CompTIA website or go to a search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, or simply go to professormesser.com/objectives and use that link to follow yourself over to the CompTIA website and then download those objectives. They will tell you everything you need to know. And if you're wondering if you're going through other study materials from somewhere else and they're asking things that seem unusual, like you haven't seen those topics before, you can always go back to the exam objectives and see if maybe they went off topic. Did they go off the list? Sometimes they do that. You'll be able to bring your focus back to what CompTIA wants you to know for the exam, which sometimes is, most of the time, is the better option. Follow that list and not just the other list. Well, let's keep going through your questions. I have a hard stop at the top of the hour this time, which is unusual for me, but this is something that I'm sensitive to. I'm watching the time very closely on my side, and I want to get through as many questions as possible. We did work through, and hopefully I explained some of the questions. A lot of you submitted questions about the questions we went through in the study group, not realizing that I go through the wrong questions as well. So I've effectively answered those questions as part of the live stream, which makes the process now much more efficient and effective for you. Other questions. This one is, since we just talked about renewal, this is a pretty good one to mention. It's from Jay. Jay asks, can I request CEUs and even renew your certification even if I got certified very recently? Absolutely. If you got certified yesterday and you are here today, you can collect a CEU and apply it towards this. In fact, you could take the CertMaster CE today and renew your certification for 3 years. That would effectively make it a 6-year certification. That might be appealing if you really know you're going to want that certification for a long period of time. Now, there's no financial benefit. It's still the same cost 3 years from now if you just want to take the CertMaster CE then. And you may find that an exam you just took, like if you just took the 1101, 1102, there is no CertMaster CE for you yet. You have to wait for the next edition of the exam to be released before they update the CertMaster CE. But on the 25th, if you took and passed the exam today or yesterday and you've earned your certification, you can wait till the 25th and then take the new CertMaster CE, assuming they release it on the 25th, which they tend to do. So yeah, you can collect CEUs, you can submit CEUs, you can work towards your renewal well before the 3-year time frame is up. You can do it immediately, and a lot of people do that just so they don't have to worry about it. They're locked in now for 6 years, they're good to go. Not every renewal process adds on 3 years. Some renewal processes reset the time frame to that date. So if you have questions about whether it does that or not, check the CompTIA website. You could always send a note to CompTIA directly if you're wondering about that one. I don't like to answer questions about the official perspective of what CompTIA wants. I prefer you ask them directly because I don't have any control over that. I don't know what the official word is. I know what they've told me, but sometimes it's better to hear it directly from them after all. Let's keep going through the list of questions that you have. We'll submit and look at some of the others that you have here. We've talked about also how much of this information you need to know. Some people were asking earlier, should I know this? Should I know that? And how much should I know about these topics? This is a good question because if you look at the exam objectives, and why don't we flip over to those really quick, just so you can understand the perspective of this. These are the 1102 exam objectives. Let's just take the very first section here that says section 1.1, identify basic features of Microsoft Windows editions. So Windows 10 editions, Windows 10 Home, Windows 10 Pro, Pro for Workstations, and Enterprise. They really don't tell you what basic features they're talking about in those editions of Windows. So the question is a valid one. Well, how do I know what to study? Well, fortunately, you have resources available to you that go back to versions of the exam that were the 600 series. So I produced an A+ course for the 600 series, the 700 series, the 800 series, the 900 series, the 1000 series, the 1100 series, and now the 1200 series. So this will be my 7th edition of training courses for the A+ exam. During that time frame, I would like to think that during that, if each one of those is 3 years, that's quite a long time. During that time frame, I've gotten a very good idea, a very good perspective of what CompTIA expects you to know. So if you go through my videos and you notice in the Windows 10 and Windows 10 11 comparisons, the Windows 11 comparison will obviously be on the new version. The Windows 10 comparison on the current version, you'll notice I go through a series of features for each one of these that helps differentiate between the different versions. Features that are available in Windows, services that are available, and minimum requirements for the different versions. So I talk about all of those. I go into what I feel is the appropriate level of detail that CompTIA would like you to know for this particular exam. This is something that a lot of people either really like or perhaps they don't like it as much. Some people like to go really deep into these topics. And if that's you, I really encourage you to continue to do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But going too deep into these topics takes you well outside the scope of the exam, and that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give you exactly what you need to know to earn your certification. So if you're watching my videos and you're making notes or you're looking through my course notes, that is the level of detail they're looking for. I try to right size it perfectly with what CompTIA is expecting from your knowledge base on this exam. And it's an important one to consider. This might be a question. Maybe you come across these topics and you just aren't sure, but you're not really watching my videos as you go. Well, this may be your opportunity then to go out and watch those videos to see how deep is Professor Messer going. Okay, now I can see how deep he's going. That's how deep I need to study for the exam. I try to do it a 1-to-1, so you know exactly what's expected of you. I don't give you any more than you need to know. I certainly don't give you less than what you need to know. It's a perfectly sized training course for the things that you want to have happen. So hopefully that will give you the information you need to pass your exam. Should be pretty good to work through this. So I will ask, there was a question we had, and I don't remember whether it was from Tuesday or whether it was from last month, on Rich, who was working towards getting that job. I think we were having a conversation about the interview process. I'm trying to remember now, and Rich, you can remind me in the chat if that's the case. I mentioned this because Rich says, got the job. Got the job. Here we go. Everybody, give Rich a big heads up. Give him a big thumbs up in the chat. Give him a big clapping hands. We need some more emojis for Rich. Got that job. Congratulations on getting the job. That's what we're trying to do here, is get you that job or get you that better job whether it's IT related, whether it's moving from a different type of job into this one. Always great to see news like this. That type of message, such a simple message, Rich. You got the job. So motivating for me. So motivating for all of us watching too. So we're all trying to get to that point. You want to get that first foot in the door. You want to really make it so that you're finally got that IT job. This is the thing about IT, really about most people working in any industry, is it's sometimes hard to break through that first barrier to get that first position. And very often, I've seen this too with a lot of people. They've said, well, I tried to get a job in IT. I got all this training. I have all these certifications. I went and got a 4-year degree in IT. I just can't seem to get my first job. So I'm just going to go work in a bar. I'm just going to be a bartender. Well, first, you may not be wrong. Bartenders get paid pretty well, but they don't get paid as well as IT. They certainly don't. Not over a long term. Maybe that first job, they get paid pretty well compared to IT. That first job in any particular segment of the world is always going to be the difficult role, the grunt work. You're doing what nobody else wants to do, or you're doing the basics of that particular job. But your goal in that first position with IT is to be a sponge. You want to be able to read as much as you can about these technologies, learn as much as you can. I'm giving you in the A+, the Network Plus, the Security Plus, a foundation, a primer on these technologies. One of the things that is kind of maybe it's an obvious thing to say, but maybe you wouldn't have thought about it unless you've been in the industry for a while, is you never stop learning. And that's because whether this is a good thing to hear or not, you're never going to know everything. You're never going to know everything. Even about a single topic, you're not going to know everything. If you were somebody, you need to learn everything about BGP. You need to learn everything about Windows. You need to learn everything about Active Directory. There's a whole lifetime of information that you're going to have to pour through. You will never know everything about those particular topics. But there are, when you start diving into it and you start reading more and more about those topics and you start really getting into Active Directory, for example, and you start getting into different forests and understanding how to back up that information and how to migrate these different Active Directory functions and how to properly set up and manage Active Directory. Now you know more about Active Directory than most people in the world. And that's a very useful niche. And it works the same whether you are interested in Linux, you learn everything there is to know about Linux. Whether you're interested in networking, you learn everything you can about switching and routing and protocols and packet captures and understanding how to read those and troubleshoot the network and design new networks. Or whether you're working on security or cloud or data centers or databases, or you see where this is going. Just find the niche that you're interested in. And I will tell you, as someone who's been in the IT industry for quite some time and worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, and I've been in absolutely some of the biggest data centers in the world, the goal for you is to find what interests you right now. Because what is going to happen in IT, just wait 5 years, everything's going to shift over to some other type of technology anyway. There will be new things coming down the line. For example, there used to be a time where we didn't do virtualization. Now that's all we do. There used to be a time when there was no cloud. Now everybody's stuck all of their data centers in the cloud. Why do you even have a data center in your facility anymore? Everybody's put it into the cloud, at least some part of it. Of course, we didn't even think about AI 2 years ago. Now that's all we think about is how generative AI is going to provide us with new functionality, and AI in general, and big data, and large data storage. All of these things work together. And 2 to 5 years from now, there will be another shift in technology. I guarantee it, because there always has been. And once maybe you learn everything you can about AI, maybe you learn everything you can about the cloud, maybe you learn everything you can about virtualization, you've gotten to be a master in these. You know everything there is. You are an expert in that particular area. And then something else comes along that nobody knows about yet. Now, instead of looking at that as a negative, and many people that I've worked with through the years really did look at this very negatively, this is an opportunity, because when this new AI technology comes out or the new big data technology is released and everybody needs knowledge about big data, nobody knows about it yet. Nobody understands it. You are at the very beginning. You are at the cusp of that particular technology. What a perfect time to jump completely in and become an expert in that niche as well. So you can kind of ride that wave as it's going up. And when you're riding that wave on the way up and you have a very specific personal knowledge of that particular niche, you become very, very valuable. Not just valuable in the way that, hey, it's nice to have you around. You become financially valuable. They want your time, and that time will be worth a lot more than somebody who's simply managing an Ethernet switch. Not that managing Ethernet switches is bad. I used to do that myself. I loved being network administration. But I know that network administration has a certain pay grade, and I know that big data has a very different pay grade. So building on those niches is important. The way that I got into the world of cybersecurity, for example, was I kept building on those niches. I started with hardware. Then I moved into operating systems. Then I moved into server administration. Then I moved into network administration and protocol analysis and network management and network configurations and network planning. And that gave me all of these foundations. I kept leveling up and leveling up and leveling up to the point that I could then level up into security. Because security is not something you jump into right out of school or your first job in IT. Security is something that you level up and you build a foundation of knowledge that you can then apply towards that particular area. Cybersecurity is a good example of that. I know that everybody on the internet will tell you, take my cybersecurity course and get your cybersecurity job, and you can get it right now. There's all these open positions in cybersecurity. They're not looking for you. They're looking for someone who already has this foundation. You can't just build that foundation overnight. You can't just build that foundation in a single boot camp. You need years of experience with operating systems, with applications, with networks to finally be qualified to talk about IT security and cybersecurity. So that's one of the things that I would recommend for you as well is don't worry so much about the first job. Now, I will tell you, I had this speaking of bad jobs, which is what I was about to talk about. When you first get a job, you're very positive about the position. And then suddenly you realize what you've gotten yourself into. I was on this trend for some reason that every other job I got was not really fantastic. I would have this amazing job and I would stay there a long time. And then I would get, bored or tired or grew out of it. And I needed to move on and level up again. And I would move to the next job. And for some reason, I couldn't choose properly. For some reason, I was not doing a very good job of picking my jobs. And I would get to the next job and it would just be awful. I'd stay there 6 months, 9 months, and was just unhappy. And what was I thinking? And I made a horrible decision. And before the depression stepped in, I would move to another job. And that job would be amazing. And I would stay there a very long time. So I did that for a very long time. Fortunately, my last 2 jobs were good. I broke the cycle. My last 2 jobs were really, really, really good. The last one being just amazing. Got to work for Palo Alto Networks, got to be a systems engineer, got to learn everything about the world's most amazing next generation firewall. That was really, you work up to that. It becomes the pinnacle of the knowledge that you have to that point. So I was able to take all of this knowledge that I've accumulated through an entire career of IT about operating systems, about networking, about applications, and finally could apply those into a job dealing with security. So that's what I'm talking about, is you really need to be patient with IT. You get that first job, it's going to seem like the hourly rate is not good and you don't have great benefits, and that's because you haven't done this before. They don't know how good you're going to be, but you know how good you're going to be. You just keep working on that and keep learning about everything and keep figuring out outside the scope. Keep your eyes open about what's going on. And when somebody is solving a network problem and you're at the help desk putting in the ticket, the network is down, send it to the network team, go. Then go see what the network team's doing. Watch what they went through. Sit with them at lunch after the problem is over and go, hey, I saw that network problem. What was that? What'd you guys end up doing? Go have those conversations. Learn from those people. Show an interest in what they were doing, because people, for some reason, don't do that. And it's a great way to first learn about what's going on with those technologies. And secondly, you're showing other people, I'd like to do that. I'd be interested in doing more about what you're doing over on the network side. And that's probably going to be your next job. You'll be able to shift gears over to the network side and work along those lines. So all of this is to say that there's no line in the sand. There's no rail that you're on. There's no solid path that everybody takes. And it must be this path. And you must do this first. And you must do that second. And you must do that third. Doesn't work that way. At least not in IT. There's some types of positions where you have to go through certain hurdles to get that job. If you want to be a nurse, you have to take a nursing license and be able to go into a hospital with that state license. If you want to be a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. With IT, you don't have such a stringent set of requirements that you have to go through. Thankfully, I would have never made it. I would have never gotten into IT. It would have been awful. But that is one of those where you get to decide the path. You get to at least have some leverage on how the path goes. You get to push one direction or the other as to how you get from one place to the other. And I think if you are someone who is wondering, is IT really for me? Can I really do this? What is the process? The process is whatever you want to make it. Find out what other people are doing in your area. Go to some user group meetings. Go to a Microsoft user group meeting. Go to a Cisco user group meeting. Go to a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting. Go to an ISSA meeting. Go to anything in your local area where technology people are meeting, and go talk to them and find out, oh, where do you work? What do you do? Are you guys hiring? Can I give you my resume? Tell me about how that works. And go through the process. Really understand what it takes to get a job doing what they do. Ask them, I don't have a job in IT. What would you recommend I do? It may be very good recommendations. It might be awful recommendations. You're the one who has to determine the quality of the answer that you are getting. But most of the time, I think you're going to find that these are very educated answers coming from people that have been in the business, that have been through many different iterations of positions, that have seen these technologies come, these technologies go. This is really where you can tap into that knowledge to give you an idea of how you should steer your boat down that particular river. And it is one that is I just have an amazing amount of fun because there's always technology to play with. And I have fun because there's always a problem to solve. So I also think there's a group of people, especially in IT, that are very attracted to solving a problem, to logically, methodically going through this process of looking at a problem, understanding what the potential issues are associated with that problem, and then going through the problem-solving process. There's really nothing better to me than finding these problems that are impossible to solve, that everybody else would just say, can't fix it, or that's not it, or have you rebooted the system, that they're not even going through the troubleshooting process. And you find out that the problem was related to a permissions setting in a particular hive of a Windows registry that was set to read only. And by simply changing that from read only to write, you now increase the boot time of that Windows computer from 10 minutes to 15 seconds, which happens. That's a problem that I ran into. And you get to the point where that was it. We solved it. We figured it out. And we went through a number of steps using a number of different troubleshooting strategies, tracing utilities. We got some Microsoft Sys internal utilities that showed us everything that was going on behind the scenes in Windows all the time. And then you solve that problem, you're on top of the world. That is one of the best feelings. So if that's the type of challenge you like, That's the type of problems you run into. And then you have to negotiate, of course, the interpersonal part of it, along with the technical part of it, along with the financial part of it, and figure out what is the best solution given the options that we have available. That, I think, is one of the best ways to approach how we look at technology and how we approach these positions. And if you're somebody who really likes solving problems, you're somebody who really likes learning, and you don't mind watching a video for training, going to a training class, hearing what other people are doing, and you want to know more about these technologies, you've spun up some VMs, you've loaded up a Linux front end, you've built your own web front end, you've worked with you loaded up some type of content management system like WordPress, you've built your own firewalls, you've configured your own Active Directory infrastructure, you've built your own wireless network, you've configured a switch network with link aggregation, you've connected over 10 gig to these different switches. That's what you're looking to do. That's the world you want to be in. You just want to roll around in the technology and become more familiar with what's out there and be able to continue that learning process, knowing that you will never be done with it. So if you're thinking that you will be able just to learn the tasks in front of you and that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career, I can tell you that's not the case. But thankfully, that's not the case. That's a good thing. Having new things to learn make this job and any IT job you run into interesting, because every day is something new. Every day is a new kind of problem. Every day is a new set of technologies that you have the potential to learn. There's really almost nothing better that when the managers come down and go, guess what, everybody, we got a new project and we're doing this. And it's always some new technology we've never touched before. It's interesting to look at the people in your organization that are now faced with that. Some people go, oh, I don't want something new. I'm not interested in change. I'm not interested. Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. There'll be other people that say, oh, this sounds good. Where do I sign up? What do we do? Do you have a manual? Do you have documentation? Can we look at this? Where are we putting it? Or is it in the cloud? There's some people that are jumping right into it, want to know how it works and all of those different pieces. And what's interesting is you often get into those scenarios where you're working on those new technologies and you really don't know the scope of it because you're just learning this technology. And then you start learning what you don't know and you realize, whoa, this is big. There's a lot happening here. And then you start becoming an expert in the technology. And then you realize, wait, this is a technology that everybody is using. And now I'm an expert in it. Now I can use the knowledge that I've learned in this to do things either here at this organization or do things somewhere else. Because when you go somewhere else, they tend to pay you more. When you do something where you are, they tend to pay you less. It's sort of the nature of the beast. IT is one of those where it's the 3-year rule. If you're at an organization for 3 years, they now start looking at you and wondering, are they going to leave? They've been here 3 years. They could leave at any point and now make more money. And there are people that I know in the industry that's what they've done their entire career. They've been somewhere, they stay 3 years, they go to the next job. And they keep incrementally getting more money each time they go to the next job. It is quite a tumultuous uproar every time you're moving. Changing positions is highly stressful. That's one of the big, I think moving is number one and changing jobs is number two on the stress level. But that is something they just enjoy doing. That's how they do it. If you go out to the Silicon Valley, a lot of people move from place to place. They're looking for a startup. They move from startup to startup in the hopes that that company will go public, because if you are there early, you get a lot of stock options that once you go public, are actually worth something. So that's another thing I see quite a bit in Silicon Valley and other places that have startups. So it really just depends on what you are comfortable doing. The last company I worked with, I think I was there 7 years in the same position and happy. That was one of the best jobs I ever had. And that's probably why I was there 7 years. It was just a great place to work with great people who knew a lot more than I did. And one of the best things you can do is work somewhere where everyone else is smarter than you. If you are at a job in IT and you're in the meeting and you're looking around and you realize, wait, I'm the smartest one here, you're in the wrong room. You need to now get in a room where you're the dumbest one so that you can continue to move up that level. One of the worst things you can do is go stagnant in IT. So make sure that you think about what you want to do, what you are interested in doing in IT. And don't worry about locking yourself in, because as soon as you get into 3 years of doing something, the next technologist will go around, the next technology will show up, and you will need to now learn something new. And it will probably take you in a different direction. That last job I had where I stayed 7 years was with Palo Alto Networks with cybersecurity. It was not my first cybersecurity job. I'd worked at Network Associates for a number of years and learned about PGP encryption and firewalls and intrusion prevention. And we had a great security offering there, and of course, antivirus. So I was able to take that knowledge and leverage it to get the job to level up into a pure cybersecurity play, which is what we had at Palo Alto Networks. So you could do the same thing. If I can do it, definitely you can do this. It is something that is sort of the nature of how things work in IT. And now you get to decide what direction you go, what features you want to have in a job, what capabilities, what technologies you want to work with, what style of position you would like to have. That's one of the great things in IT, is that there are different jobs available that do different things, that offer you different capabilities and different benefits. So it's one of the great parts about this. That's one of the things that drives me doing this, is that I've already done this. I've already been through that world of IT. I know the value that's there. And if that is any interest to you, I want to bring you along too and put you into that same ramp to get you and your family the support, the financial support, and the technology knowledge that you can use for the rest of your career. It's there. It's just ready to be taken. You just need to go grab it. It's one of the things that I love about information technology. Well, as I mentioned, I had a hard stop at the top of the hour, which technically I do every time, but I never seem to take it. This time I do have to take it, and I sure appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate your time in the first hour answering these questions that we have. We had some pretty good ones today. Most of you did really, really well on that, which is always fun to see. And then your questions in the second hour are so useful as well. Get us talking about all kinds of interesting things and directions and thoughts and comments and suggestions. It's always a lot of fun too. And we love doing these study groups. We have our next study group next week on Wednesday. We have our Network Plus study group. If you haven't put that on your calendar, you might want to look at that over at professormester.com/calendar. And if you're watching this video well after the March-April timeframe, go back to the calendar, find out when our next live event is going to be. We would love to have you join us there as well. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's good to see you all again. Those of you that were here for the first time, thanks for joining us. Those of you that have been here for a while, good to see you again as well. We'll look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group.